Just first, your initial assessment of the response in the state of Delaware to Hurricane Irene from an emergency preparedness and response standpoint.
Well, we had quite a number of days of advance warning as we were able to track the storm. It basically, as we saw, tracked probably a little bit to the east of what we thought it was going to do initially. In terms of the emergency response, one of the particular challenges, of course, is in evacuations, particularly of coastal or low-lying areas. And unfortunately, we always need more time to evacuate than we know for sure exactly where the storm is going to go or exactly how strong it's going to be.
But relatively speaking, do you feel it went as well as it could have gone, based on all those factors?
At least from what we're seeing now, I would say yes, but there'll be several days or probably even weeks of reflecting back on what happened before we know for sure.
I was going to say, nobody wants to go through these situations, but in terms of planning, there's, I guess, nothing like going through a situation to really learn how good your plans actually are.
An event like this does allow us to test our planning and procedures, to understand what works well, to see what might be improved upon for the next event.
I'm interested in what things maybe government agencies should be looking at in the wake of this in terms of preparing for the next one. Are there specific things that they should be focusing on based on what they saw over the last couple of days?
I think that from what we saw, the focus was in the areas that are generally prudent for emergency management in terms of evacuating and warning coastal areas, in terms of advising people to be listening to the radio or to television, in terms of advising people about the level of risk and to assess their own risks based on where they live. There was a lot of communication from the media out to the public in terms of the nature of the hurricane hazard in general, in terms of what to do at home, in terms of people's own household and family preparedness.
I was going to say there was some in the last maybe 24 hours response from people who maybe weren't as impacted by the storm, that you mentioned media coverage and media response, that it was too much hype. It was overblown because the storm didn't turn out to be a worst case scenario. What do you say to people who look at it and say, oh, they overstated the situation and they need to calm down?
Well, as I said, one of the challenges for public officials with a hurricane is that you don't know really precisely what its track is going to be until comparatively a short amount of time before it actually makes landfall or until it reaches a particular area. So if we look at Hurricane Irene, if the track had been just a little bit different, or if it hadn't, or if the storm hadn't weakened in a day or two before it made landfall the way that it did, we could have been looking at a very different situation along much of the coastline. And as it was, this was a significant event with a lot of rainfall, a lot of wind, coastal erosion. Unfortunately, there were a number of fatalities along the East Coast. So even as a Category 1 storm, this was still fairly significant. And one of the things also that we'll see over the next couple of days is flooding as all the rain starts to drain out into the various streams and channels. So for some places, there's still a risk. So this was not a minor storm.
And I guess, is that one of the lessons that a lot of public officials learned from Hurricane Katrina, that it's better to err on the side of caution and maybe over-prepare rather than wait until the last minute and try to react to a situation?
Well, again, the amount of time that you have to actually make decisions is much less than the amount of time that the amount of warning that you have in advance. One of the things that we also saw from Hurricane Floyd back in 1999 was the way that flooding can take place within 24 or 36 hours, even after the storm has passed. So the danger isn't over even once the storm has gone by.
From people maybe who aren't emergency planners, people who are just the average citizens, is this an opportunity for them also to kind of take stock of what went on and what happened and how prepared they actually are?
It's an opportunity for everybody to take stock, whether it's public officials, whether it's the nonprofit organizations that are involved in providing disaster relief, or whether it's individuals in their own homes, to look at what went well and what didn't, to consider whether they have sufficient food and water to last for a few days if there's no electricity, to consider whether they have where they might evacuate to in the event that they had to leave their home. What if they have pets? Have they made provisions for all aspects of their household? So this is a time to reflect back on what we did and what we might be ready for in the next possible event.
As you mentioned, it was a significant event, but not as significant maybe as it could have been. Is there ever a worry that when the worst case scenario doesn't come about, that whether it be public officials or individuals get a certain level of complacency? So the next time around they go, oh, remember, the last time they said it was going to be so bad and it wasn't. Is that something from a preparedness standpoint that people have to guard against?
The research is a little bit mixed on that, to be honest. I mean, sometimes what we've seen is that in places where people have experienced an event and have come through fairly well, there is a tendency to think that the next one is going to be just like that, when really what they've experienced may not be representative at all of the danger that they're likely to face. So part of the job for public officials is to continually remind the public of what's the nature of the risk or the hazards in the place that they live.
All right. We appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
All right. Thanks a lot.